I'd like to send a little something to all you gargoyles and gargettes out there running amok tonight. And it goes something like this. Here, gargoyles! Here, gargoyles! Oh,
God. Hey guys, welcome back to the Bucket Think Tank for another round of comic chat, and we're going to right into it with Gargoyles. There's another Gargoyles week. I'm really enjoying that. This year is ending with a bunch of Gargoyle stuff. It's really great. So anyway, we've got two books as is customary for Gargoyles. Gargoyles issue 4, Dark Ages, or Gargoyles Dark Ages issue 4. I'm bad at this. So this takes place pretty much after the events of the victory of Prince Malcolm's forces, and the gargoyle we'll know as Hudson, and him acquiring the name Mentor, which is still something I just don't agree with. We saw a lot of stuff beginning to happen there. We see Demona meet up with the Archmage, and we see the beginning of that relationship. We've seen a gargoyle have feelings for Demona from the looks of it. And we see Goliath, the gargoyle we'll know as Goliath, slowly come to learn from the gargoyle known as Mentor, which I think we should just call him Wyvern. But, whatever. So let's sort of go into that. So our story opens up with Robbie, or Robert as he's called, taking his daughter Eliza to the site of the castle being built, Castle Wyvern. And it looks real nice. It's not often we see the castle during the day, let alone this version of it. What's interesting is they go through and they see what looks to be older structures there, more ancient structures, which we'll see in the episode, what was it, Old Wounds? Yeah, Old Wounds, where we'll see the captain of the guard and the Viking Hakon are still stuck. Their souls are stuck in like eternal punishment for what they did, and they sort of wonder, like, hey, did this belong to people that worked with the gargoyles before or whatever? Honestly, we never quite found out, but now we're seeing the beginnings of that. As this also happens, Robert is made the captain of the guard, which means that Robert is this guy, the guy who was going to side with the Vikings and Demona to take the castle for the gargoyles, which is still weird. Like, I get the premise being sold here, but I never quite understood his motive or reasons why. He liked the gargoyles, so he's willing to let everyone in the castle be massacred? Okay. Right, so anyway, his daughter Eliza goes to the rookery, and she effectively adopts all the gargoyle eggs. Like, you know what? I'm your mother now. This will be great. Alright, I'll give you all names, it'll be fun, and whatnot. And goes into the night where, hey, the gargoyle kids awaken, and they all have fun. Alright? It's great. Hey, look, it's the same kids. It's weird that the blue one looks like Adam Driver. But it's a girl, so it's even weirder. But anyway. As this goes on, we see Goliath and apparently Desdemona, as she's called at this point. And we see the gargoyles will know as Cold Stone and Cold Fire. I think they have, like, actual names in the fandom, or names they would have gotten. I'm not sure. I think the idea of gargoyles not getting names came later in the creation of the show, but I don't know. So anyway, Goliath and Desdemona, we're just gonna call her Demona, let's be honest with ourselves, kiss, and like, hey, I've got to go, love. There's something I need to do. The gargoyles will know as Cold Stone and Cold Fire. Cold Fire goes, I also have something to do, love. And, they've also got stuff to do, so, they go off, and they're being watched by jealous simps. Alright, we see Hippolyta, who I guess has a crush on Demona, I think, which would be interesting. And we see Iago, who we'll later know as, what was it, Cold Steel? Yes. We have Cold Stone, Cold Fire, and Cold Steel. Yeah, it's a whole thing. We'll see them later. We'll see them much later. We find out that the gargoyle was Cold Fire. Why don't I know her name? She is studying to be a warrior priestess. Alright? and she's, I guess it sort of plays into how sort of philosophical she is in her actual stories. So there's that. Damona's learning from the Archmage, and as they point out, there's much work they have to do, and that sort of is the theme going on here. We'll see that Goliath and Coldstone are doing a lot of work helping build Castle Wyvern at night, which is another reason why the humans want to protect the Gargoyles during the day. Like, hey, they've helped us win, and they're helping us build the castle. They are partners, and we have to look after them. So everything's really good right now, even though we see this unholy alliance between the Archmage and Demona. So we'll see where that goes. Meanwhile, Eliza is playing with the Gargoyle kids, hearing stories. The story is really just a story of Prince Malcolm's rise to power. And before the story can really finish, like, hey, it's getting late, story for another time, there appears to be some sort of other story going on in the background between the storytellers and the artisans. So we'll see where that plays off, hopefully next month. Maybe that'll take the story in a new direction going forward. We see that Eliza is really bonding with the Gargoyles, like she wants to be their friend. They want to be her friend. It's sweet, it's tender, it's great. I do love it. Even weird because I never thought I'd see Brooklyn, Broadway, and Lexington so small. Bronx is fine. Bronx is best boy. He'll always be that perfect size. But they all agree that they'll be friends, and as the dawn comes and they turn to stone, she gives them names. So Brooklyn's name was apparently going to be Caesar. Lexington was going to be Alexander. Broadway was going to be Charlemagne. And the Adam Driver one was going to be Antiope. So, yeah, that's weird. And so she rests for the day and dreams of flying with her gargoyle friends as the comic ends. Really sweet, really tender. That girl's going to die. That's how the comic ends. So, this was fun. We saw a lot of characters sort of coming together in the roles that we'll see them as in the future. I think it's interesting that we see Robbie become the captain of the guard because, as I said before, we don't know what event is going to lead him to siding with the Gargoyles and betraying the humans, or in this case, Demona, and siding with the Gargoyles to align with the Vikings to take out the humans and take the castle. And I think it definitely involves his daughter and that gargoyle. So who knows? And maybe Hippolyta will play a role too. So, who knows? Overall, really nice. I like how, for the most part, our mainstay gargoyles are not there anymore. Like, this issue here only has like one scene of Hudson, or Wyvern, or Mentor as he's called. I'm so addicted to calling him Wyvern. So there's that. But everyone else so far, with the exception of Demona and Goliath, are mostly in the background. We're seeing a lot of characters who are already established under new guise, a new way of looking at them so far. We see the gargoyle known as Coldfire to be very dedicated and a bit stoic, having trouble sort of opening her mind up to the greater mysteries. We see a somewhat timid Demona, and that's always new. Like, the closest we ever got to a timid Demona was in, what was it, Vows? When Demona went back into the past and we met a younger Demona who really just was sort of revulsed at who she would become. So yeah, there's that. Overall, though, still really fun. Can't wait for issue 5. And finally, we have the real meat of this video. The real story everyone's been waiting for. Issue 10 of Gargoyles. We are at issue 10. Jesus. This story is getting wild. So anyway, if you recall, Goliath is still on trial, or rather, this trial is to determine whether or not he is entitled to human rights. Alright? And again, that's an interesting question, and it's a question that sets a big precedent. So, honestly, Mr. Crest is not doing so well, so he's calling in his final witness, his final testimony for his plaintiff, and it is Eliza. And so that's how the comic ends, and we open up, as we have every other issue, with a nice little introduction from, this is my new gargoyle waifu. I hate that I've reached this point, that I have a gargoyle waifu. I need a girlfriend. Katana. Alright, Katana talks about how in her clan, they called her Katana, and in her time period, gargoyles were called Tengu. And if you think about it, there's some fun little back and forth between those two. I actually do want to read up on it more to see if I can find anything else out. But here she talks about how it feels, since she and Brooklyn have been traveling to the past, into the future, and in all their little adventures. One thing she hasn't seen is a relationship like Goliath and Eliza. And that really is what the focus of this issue is going to be for the most part. And so Crest wants Eliza to explain her relationship with Goliath, all right? And she's like, look, how'd you meet? He's like, well, it was 1994. Dear God, it was 1994. Jesus. And it was an incident at the Erie building, i.e., she fell off the Erie building. Goliath swooped down and saved her. She was so shocked by him. But since then, they've worked together a lot, stopping crimes, making up rhymes, solving mysteries, flirting with each other in every chance they get. She can say that. But she points out with a lot of great pride that, Goliath has helped take down a lot of great threats, like the Pack and the Dracons. Yeah. And she points out, look, I know first impressions are important, but they shouldn't define them. She pointed out, yeah, I was afraid of Goliath when I first saw him. That was my first impression of him. But since then, he's the most humane person I've ever met. And Crest is like, okay, that was sweet and all, but that's not what I asked. I asked, what is your relationship with Goliath? And so, Eliza, quiet, she takes the deep breath. Goliath clearly did not want this out. All right, because I think he knows exactly what's going to happen. She points out, she loves him. All right, she is in love with him romantically. All right, he's honest and open and brave, and she loves him, and she's confident that he loves her, and it's just sweet and tender. And Brooklyn's like, holy crap, she actually said it. I knew it. We all knew it. But she said it on court, on live TV. And point out, this is the trial. There was a court stenographer who typed up, she's like, oh my God. And she probably looked at him like, you get it, girl. You get it. Woman to woman, I get it. Katana points out that, yeah, she's worried if it's going to be enough to sway the court. The Dracon's like, wow, that's a lot of courage. But as our douchebag Dracon points out, there's a douchebag Dracon in this family, that, it's a nice Romeo and Juliet story, but the world isn't kind to Romeo and Juliet. Which might be the nicest thing he's ever said, or at least the coolest thing. Yale comes in, and I want to give Yale points. This might be her best bit here, as she points out. So, you claim that these creatures have helped you apprehend criminals, and have you ever disclosed this information to the Manhattan Police Department? Do they know that you work with Gargoyles? Do they know that you have enlisted Gargoyles for help in police matters? And she says, no. Did they even know that you know the existence of Gargoyles? No. Did even your commanding officer, Officer Chavez, know about this? And she says, no, she did not tell Captain Chavez. Or anyone. And she says, no. So, let's pose this question then. When you asked to be part of the Gargoyle Task Force, did you tell them of your relationship with the Gargoyles? And she said no. And so, Yale goes on, tries to wax poetically, drags out her question with a lot of preamble, to, again, put ideas in the head of the judge, which is what they do. This is one of the reasons why they drag things out. They're trying to lead not necessarily the witness, but the judge or jury to this line of questioning, to their position. But what Yale's saying, look, how can we trust her when she has chosen at every chance to not disclose the truth? All right, she has actually put on this Gargoyles task force and did not disclose her relationship with the Gargoyles. All right, she has used them for police matters. So how can we trust her on anything when she has not been honest with us? So there's that. Xanatos and Fox are watching. It is weird to me that Xanatos looks like he's wearing pajamas. I cannot get the idea of him wearing pajamas out of my head. It's terrible. Don't ever do that again. He should always be wearing a suit. And not like a proper suit. Just a sports coat. Oh, what kind of douchebag wears a sports coat? Shut up. So anyway, that's all ruined by Owen coming in. So Preston Vogel's on the phone for Fox, um, and she's like, "I'll call him back." He's not letting him preempt the best show on television right now. Clearly, Preston Vogel's calling because of her father. All right, this Preston Vogel does not talk to Fox anymore. But that's all interrupted by Queen Titania, Queen Lady of Avalon, husband of Lord Oberon, and guardian of the third race, approaches Fox from her, I guess, her magic mirror and says, "It's time." So we then come to closing statements. Mr. Crest has decided like we're waiving statements at this time. We have no closing statement. And Miss Yale, she's like, "I'll be brief, for despite the amazing and entertainment distraction here, the only possible decision is clear. It is outside the scope of this court to redefine the definition of humanity. Period." And Crest is like, "Gotcha, I'm in. I don't play this card often, but we're going to play it. I have a rebuttal. Stand up, Goliath." All right, here. Opposing counsel spoke about the definition of humanity. All right? And I want to point out that there was a time in this country where someone who looked like me did not fit the definition of humanity and was not entitled to those rights. All right? And I want to point out that history does not look kindly on the oppressor. All right? So he's pretty much saying, like, this is a big precedent being stated. And this will not be the end. This will not be the end. Like, if you read this, you can clearly feel this should be brought up to the Supreme Court. And we'll probably see this be ruled again. This is what? In, at most, the state of New York will say gargoyles have human rights, if it goes that way. But what about the rest of the states? This is a matter in terms of human rights, I think should fall to the Supreme Court. But we don't have time for that. We don't have time to take Goliath all the way to D.C. It'd be like a series finale. Anyway, so it goes in. Everyone waits with bated breath of what is the defining case of the 90s going into the year 2000. It's only 1995, but still, what else is going to happen? Well, the Clinton thing? Anyway, so the judge comes in and says, like, you know what? As to the matter before the court, whether Goliath possesses sentience, that seems obvious and is not truly in question. He says, but for the record, I rule that the gargoyle Goliath does clearly possess sentience. I mean, that is not up for debate here. All right? But nothing in our Constitution guarantees rights to the sentient, which I think is an interesting position for, like, abortion rights, technically? I don't know. And as Miss Yale keeps pointing out, one must be human to qualify for human rights. But this is where the judge goes. But still, what constitutes humanity? Testimony from the gargoyles and others suggests that Goliath embodies all the qualities which our species defines as the definition of what it means to be humane. So, my ruling is Goliath qualifies for the same rights as humans. And since he was arrested without charge and not been convicted of any crime, he must be free. All right, so let him go. Take the chains off him. Get him out of here. And we're out. All right, so my career's dead. Everyone's happy. All right, Hudson gives like the best happy face. I love it. I really do. I love Happy Hudson. And Katana, stop looking at me like that. This girl's bad for me. This girl is bad for me. And I really need a girlfriend. So, as Goliath walks out, he gets a bunch of questions. No one asking questions of Eliza, of all things. That's how distracting Goliath is. Alright, Owen comes in and he whispers something in Goliath's ear. Goliath has to go off. This is a really cool image of Goliath. This is so cool. I want it. I wants it. Love it. But before we see what's going on there, we find out that Xanatos has bribed the judge, alright, to rule in Goliath's favor. Xanatos says it was the right decision either way. The judge doesn't quite believe it, but, you know, a nice, tidy sum was deposited to Cayman Islands account, so he's alright with that, as he's going to be forced to effectively retire at this point. he wanted to work for defend corporations because he's such an upstanding citizen. But whatever. I like this because this brings up a line from Ben Franklin in the musical 1776. Revolutions come about like bastard children, half improvised and half compromised. It was Goliath and everyone that provided the improvised, and the judge provided the compromise. So there we are. Also, if you want to be more current, since I guess I'm just an old fossil, anyone remember the House of X Powers of 10 when Jonathan Hickman was writing it and people all around liked the book? And we found out that Emma Frost had used her powers to change the minds of the people voting for whether or not Krakoa should be a nation, and I still found that was really, really shady, and if that ever comes out, it'll do more harm for mutants, because telepaths cannot be trusted in the Marvel Universe. Alright, they are the worst thing to happen to mutants. Don't make me be anti-mutant. But anyway, they are not an allegory for black people. Anyway. So, the comic ends with Goliath going to Cyberbiotics and visiting Halcyon Renard for what appears to be his final moments. And that's how the comic ends. It's interesting how happy this story was and how emotional for it to end on such a note. Do we think I should sit down? I think I should sit down. Just move up a bit here. I think the chair needs to be higher. But I think what I really liked about this was the back and forth conversation, the deliberation onto whether or not Goliath is deserving of human rights. Should we declare gargoyles a separate class altogether? It sounds bad, but for the most part, they do function entirely differently than humans. For the most part, they still need to eat, they still need to sleep, they're affected by pretty much the same thing, so maybe they don't fall under a separate class. I think the problem is, like everyone else, we are sort of distracted from the fact that they don't look like us. They are technically a separate species. So we're really sort of posing the same question that will happen if aliens ever come to the planet. At what point do we grant them the same rights? I think we'd all agree that sentience and that sort of common camaraderie that we would use to define humans, not just in terms of like, hey, how we look, but intelligence, emotions, feelings, senses, dimensions, all those things, and go forward with that. I think Yale made maybe one or two good points. I think Kress was really shined when he was sort of poking at the fact that the defendants were just like sucky people, pointing out like, hey, look, you operate on someone while they were unconscious. All right, you inspected someone's body while they were unconscious. All right, and you're a bigot. No one cares what you think. All right, I think that worked too. Yale had some good. I think Yale really shined with her closing statement as well as the interrogation of Eliza. Whether you agreed with her or not, it did not look good that Eliza hid her knowledge of the Gargoyles for what appears to be the entire time they've been in Manhattan, and used them to help with police matters. So Eliza will definitely face some backlash from that. We might see her actually be put before Internal Affairs. And the question is, what about Matt Bluestone, Eliza's partner? He's going to have to come forward and say something. He can either deny the Gargoyles or like, hey, yeah, I'm with them too. Overall, though, really fun. This is actually... So having fun, Greg Wiseman on Twitter. Alright. He's a nice guy. He gets a lot of the same questions. He's currently talking about The Marvels, a movie I don't care about. So, kind of avoiding that because Greg, as much as I like him, has some SJW traits to him. And granted, if you read Gargoyles and Young Justice, you would sort of get that. But the problem is, Greg's good at it. Like, he doesn't put the story after whatever message he's trying to put. Alright, his character's always fun, dynamic. You don't have to like all of them, but they're always great characters. Alright? And there was a discussion he had about... what was the discussion? Like, Eliza... Someone said Eliza's, like, Eliza being a woman of color was not a big part of her character. And he said, well, there was an entire episode about it. I'm like, it really wasn't. Eliza could have been white and that entire story would have been the same. That's kind of it. The only reason it mattered was because her mother was there. And her mother's heritage played no role in that, as far as I remember. But whatever. Greg is a really great writer. I really, at some point, would like to see him do something else at DC. I should also just finally watch Young Justice again. Like, I kind of stopped after it left Cartoon Network, but I've left Cartoon Network anyway, so I might as well watch Young Justice. Well, Cartoon Network left me, being honest. DC Nation left us all, either way. So, who knows? He should do more work at DC. DC should really get him on the payroll in a more common capacity. But unless it gets in the way of Gargoyles, in which case, I'm sorry, you guys blew it. You should have got him earlier. So anyway, with that in mind, this brings to a close. If you are new to the Bug Family, feel free to like, comment, share, subscribe. This is the third time I've had to make this video. The first one was terrible, like just outright terrible, and the second one, the sound would not come on. It was just a nightmare. So I'll catch you all later. This is Bug Think signing off. Thanks for watching. As always, may your fandom serve you well.
Here, Gargoyles! Here, Gargoyles! Oh, Gargoyles! Oh, yeah, Gargoyles! Do you hear me calling ya? Come on home to me, 'cause I need you, my macabre gargoyle. Come to me, Gargoyles. Oh, God.